most important word in the English language for me is why. Why are we working Monday to Friday 9 to 5?
Good morning. My name is Chris Kane. I've had the privilege of going on a huge journey over the last 30 years, which saw me splitting my career working with interesting people, both on the supply side and the client side. In the mid-90s, I moved to the client side to work with the Walt Disney Company, and then more laterally with the British Broadcasting Corporation, where they let me loose to spend and be responsible for their estate transformation project, which totaled £2 billion of investment over 10 years and 16 to 18 major projects, the biggest being New Broadcasting House, which you'll see on the news most days, and probably the most dramatic being shifting a portion of the BBC out of London and helping create a new city called Media City UK in Salford near Manchester. That's probably one of the toughest ones, was to face up to the fact that I needed to leave Ireland and to move to London to finish my training as a chartered surveyor and to follow in the footsteps of my dad and grandfather, who had also been involved in real estate. Having qualified as only one of 12 surveyors in the entire Ireland, I thought that was a pretty safe bet to get a job, but 1980s Ireland is a very different place to where it is today, and the jobs weren't there. So of the 12 graduates, 4 got jobs and the other 8 emigrated. And the tough choice was, I was given the privilege to be the first in my family to go to third level education. I realised I had some talents, and something deep inside me said, don't throw away your talents, go and build them. And that led me to London, and that led me to all the remarkable experiences and interesting people I've met over the last 30 years of living here. So it was a tough choice. The second one was coming into the BBC and meeting a lot of nice people, but realising that the team wasn't right, and making a decision after a few months, with the helpful support of my boss, to close the entire management team. Something which was unheard of in the BBC at the time, and still is a matter of HR folklore, in that nobody else has ever done it before. And there were nice people, but one particular individual who was really distraught came back, having slammed the door and almost hit me in his exit interview, came back a year later and said, "Thank you, Chris, it was the best thing you ever did for me." Most people are quite naturally concerned to make difficult decisions. And it's easy to make a difficult decision when you can hide behind layers of management or whatever. But when it's upfront and personal, that makes it all the more challenging. And I learned that having been involved in a number of restructures of the Walt Disney Company and doing things Southern Californian style, which was quite a learning curve in its own right, but you did face up to things, whereas you look at many leaders and they'll take the easy route of hiding behind layers of minders, whatever, and they don't win any respect for that. When historians write up this period we're living through, they will describe it as sort of a revolution akin to the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century. Why? Because the natural order is broken. I mean, there's no longer the dominance of the West. We're now in a fairly flat world. Friedman, I think, was substantially right, and you can't look at a condescending nature at other markets because they're just as big a kid on the block now as the old Western society was. So all the old rules are going out, but many people, many businesses haven't equipped themselves to navigate that. These leaders of major organizations don't have, I think, the courage of their convictions to do anything else but try and maintain the status quo, whilst it's a bit like Nero fiddling whilst Rome burns. And that's what's happening out there. Where's that questioning ability to dream? I think that's a great question. Most of the people say dreaming is stifled out of young people by the time they're 8, which is, I think, is a bummer, given that I had the privilege of meeting some of Walt's old colleagues when I started at Disney as an Imagineer. And the ability to imagine, just have a go. I think the key one is authenticity. I think all leaders have to sit back and have a look at themselves and decide whether they want to be the real leader or what they've learned from a business book, whatever, and what they've been conditioned by their organisation. You know, it's the classic, I worked very hard to get up the greasy pole to get that corner office and the dedicated car parking slot. So what? You know, the whole debacle over, you look at Barclays and many of the big banks, they're struggling to get people now because the young folk and the not so young folk are saying, actually, do I want to work for this guy? And that whole thing about choice, I think, underpins everything. We've all been brought up to where we had limited choice. And I think that now that broader choice, the shift of power from the producer to the consumer brought about by social media, is that going to impact work? And by definition, is that going to impact organisation? And that's difficult because if you're the leader, you've got the share options, you've probably got a nice deal. Why should I change? And that is a very tough, very, very demanding question. Leadership for many people has been too easy because leadership is lonely, as we all know, but also it requires courage. It requires courage to make tough decisions, as you rightly identify, but also to think the unthinkable and say the unsayable. And when you're conditioned, and this is very much driven by circumstances of your company, the stock market, you look at this love affair people have with quarterly results and trying to finesse the figures, go and talk to some Chinese or Indians or Singaporeans and actually look at things in a more longer term perspective. At the end of the day, you get a better result. And to allow her people to understand that sometimes you do drop the ball or you screw up, and that's okay. Don't do it too often, but most importantly, learn from those screw-ups, and you get a much better organisation. You can't do it on your own. You have to work with a group of like-minded people, and you have to find those people, and you have to grow them if they need growth. One thing that I've found is that people appreciate being appreciated. Just give them the little bit of a nudge, a little bit of air cover to aspire to do even better. And that then builds loyalty around a cause. And what we're doing with Beyond the Workplace is actually reaching out to whoever. No rules, no exclusions, nobody barred, to say, okay, we've all had our respective experiences, come on a journey, and let's see, can we make a difference? And that's what we did at the Beeb, where I had to change the team. One of the key success factors was sponsorship, and I was very fortunate in having really good sponsorship. But sponsorship doesn't last forever. And when I saw that my sponsorship was moving on, and I'd done my bit anyway. It was a program rather than a job, and I voted for my own extinction, which once again HR found a little strange. You mean you want to go? I said, yeah, but my job is done. You can get somebody at half my costs because you don't need big projects; they're all done. And this was an anathema to certain of my HR colleagues. So you know when to move on if you're in a leadership position or if you're building. But build any organisation around good people. Make it as diverse as possible, deliberately so. Because the one thing I've learned also is the dangers of groupthink. And everybody coming from the same background and say, this is the answer, it's the only answer, we've done it hundreds of times before. But you always want somebody to say, but what if? And I think, the most important word in the English language for me is why. Why are we working Monday to Friday 9 to 5? Why do we all insist upon commuting into large cities such as New York and Manhattan, London and Paris and Tokyo? Why? Can we do something different? Can we use different ways of working? What is work in the 21st century? So, and to deal with all of these big questions, which are scary, you can't do it on your own. You can engage wide and far, and you need to do that. And you need to cross boundaries and get different perspectives from different age groups and from different mindsets and beliefs.
Wow.